Ou alors il y a ça aussi. Non,
tako i u Strasbourgu rekli su da je ekonomija. No, no.
But this is the bottom.
Yes. Here. It works. It works. It works. It's on. It's on.
Okay. Dear colleagues, it's a great occasion to see all of you, your faces. We wish you born new year, good health, and we encourage you to fight for our European values in your honorable, distinguished countries. So we are proud to have all of you with your internal prepared conditions for this important week. So I would like to ask you the permission to declare the first part session of the 2025 ordinary session of the Parliamentary Assembly of our Council of Europe declared to be open. Thank you so much, and if you allow me, I will use my traditionally longest-standing member few minutes to say a few personal words. It's inscripted, enshrined in our tradition to do that. Last time, if you remember, and Despina and Secretary General remember, and our two speakers remember, it was related to Russian opposition last year, to liberation of Vladimir Karamurza. We're glad he was liberated. And now I'm going to say about today's event and our moral duties, our moral commandments. So today in Auschwitz, we have a commemoration of the biggest tragedy of the Second World War, of the organized crime called Holocaust, and organized crime against other ethnicities created by the Nazi regime. So today, just in this moment, dear friends, we have our national delegations from more like 100 countries, from Europe and elsewhere, from the United States, Canada, Australia, and other places who are committed to say important words. Let's make our Strasbourg voice, Council of Europe voice, reasonable about this today event. And I would like to share that my family faced the Holocaust, and I am from second Holocaust generation family. My mother was arrested by Gestapo and sent to Strasbourg concentration camp. My grandfather was in Dachau. So you're allowing me to share a few words. On this day, 8 years ago, Auschwitz was liberated. We now remember this day as International Holocaust Remembrance Day. The shameless slaughter of millions of European Jews who contributed through the ages to building Europe, along the countless members of other minorities slaughtered by Nazis, was the most appalling crime in this world has seen through the ages. So 80 years after the Holocaust, we have incredible fact when the dictatorial regimes are using the anti-Nazi wording and actually compromising the anti-Nazi wording. Today, like a member of the Holocaust family, I am appealing not to use to Mr. Putin and Lukashenko, not to use fake anti-Nazi slogan. Well, we, Holocaust families, not allowing them to manipulate with our fate in Auschwitz, Buchenwald for their political imperial purposes. They should be stopped. Today, remembrance of the Holocaust is extremely personal to me, and I am so glad that we all are today united. We must recall the bravery of the leaders of anti-Nazi uprising in the ghetto of Warsaw, across Nazi-occupied territories. You remember Anulewicz, uprisal in 43, Warsaw ghetto, with few guns against Nazi troops, incredible courage. So I would like to ask you if you will be joining me in this effort to propose a minute of silence of all those brave Europeans who contributed to Europe, silence. And we have museum in Amsterdam of Anne Frank, but thousands of diaries was not created. It was silenced world. Let's take this world on our moral duty, and let's remember in everyday activities fighting hatred, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, in our European Islamophobia, in our European soil, standing with them together. If you allow, I would like to raise you for a minute of silence for the Holocaust victims and victims of the concentration camps during Second World War. Thank you so much. Thank you so much in the name of my family too. So one of the goals creating Europe was, and our parliamentary assembly, was the horrors of the Second World War. For 75 years, we parliamentarians have met to carry out this task and to face our common challenges. Today, we have a moral obligation to continue the vision of our founders, to work across borders and across party lines. The integrity of Europe is at stake, is under threat from dictatorial regimes. We must be battle ready against totalitarian regimes together, all parties, and ask old friends and new colleagues in this room to have in their minds the horrors that occurred on this continent under fascism, to bear in mind the terrible suffering that happened in Ukraine today, and to embrace a spirit of working tirelessly, constructively, and ambitiously together to strengthen European unity and to propose valuable solutions to the issues we all face together. The 1.5 million children who were killed in the Holocaust did not have a voice. But decades later, we must hear their call to protect human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. An international order should be protected. International order should be protected. We have an European obligation to support democrats on our continent, like we're supporting President Sandu in Moldova. We're supporting, of course, the opposition after fake election yesterday in Belarus and Tikhanovskaya, like elected president. We're supporting Georgian Democrats in their fight for Georgian belongingness to Europe and to our values. I'm so have pleasure to declare today our session of the Parliamentary Assembly open. So, our friends and colleagues, our first item on the agenda is examination of credentials of new members. Listen carefully up. The names of the members are in document 16097. If no credentials are challenges, the credentials will be ratified in this chamber. So, are any credentials are challenged? That's my question to you, side, please.
Mrs. Buriana.
Madam Buriana, nice to see you, please.
Before she takes the floor, please.
Before calling a member to speak on the point, I must remind the Assembly that the rules on challenges to credentials require the member challenging credential to state which credentials are being challenged, whether the challenge is under Rule 7, procedural grounds, or Rule 8, substantive grounds, and the reason for the challenge. Please, dear Boriana, the floor is open.
Georgian parliament is one-party parliament with only Georgian limited. Ivanishvili regime is demolishing democratic order in Georgia. This is the reason I challenge the credentials on behalf of the EPP group with regard to Article A2A in the Rules of Procedure. I challenge the credentials of the Georgian delegation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is challenging the credential of the delegation of Georgia on substantive grounds, right?
Yes.
It's correct. Thank you. So I would like to ask if under rule, thank you, Madam, thank you so much. Under Rule 8, your challenge must be supported by at least 30. I would like to say 30 members from at least 5 national delegations present in the chamber today, currently. Will those members supporting this challenge please rise in your places and remain standing while we check whether the requirement is met? Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen.
Now you start here.
Yeah, now our table of is just counting. Please understand that. And
it's more than 30, so you go here.
So, can I receive the message?
Yes,
it's okay?
This is the message.
So, the challenge has the support required under Rule of Procedure. Thank you so much. The credentials are, of the Georgian delegations are referred without debate to the monitoring committee and to the Committee on Rules and Procedures, Immunities and Institutional Affairs for opinion. The monitoring committee shall report within 24 hours if it will be technically possible, but probably will be. If there are any objections,
It is agreed to?
it's, friends, colleagues, it's agreed to. The President will make proposal for the examination by the Assembly of the committee's report when we consider the draft agenda. That will be a little bit later. Thank you. I remind you, I'm sorry, it's okay. I remind you that members of all national delegations whose credentials are challenged may sit provisionally with the same rights as other Assembly members until the Assembly was reached a decision. However, those members shall not vote in any proceedings relating to the examination of credentials which concerns them personally. Friends, we have the other question. Are there other challenges? No, not the case. So I would like to declare, having your opinion here clearly set, the other credentials set out in document 16097 are ratified. The credentials of other organizations are ratified. I welcome our new colleagues after new approval and wish you good contribution to our common goals. Now I'm going to the election of the president of our assembly. So, if you agree, I'm just starting with the president elections. No members can be candidate for the presidency unless nominated in writing by at least 10 members before the opening of the session or part session. I have received just only one candidature, that our current president, Mr. Theodoros Rousopoulos of Greece. The names of those who have supported his candidacy have been published in document 2025-03. So I would like to focus your attention. I therefore declare that all requirements are fulfilled. Mr. Rousopoulos elected president of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe for this ordinary session. It's written that I should congratulate you, so I'm congratulating you from my heart, like a longest-standing member.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dear Secretary General, dear Alain, Madam Secretary General of the Assembly, dear Despina, ambassadors, members of the Assembly, dear colleagues, honorable former presidents of this Assembly, I wish to start by expressing my gratitude for re-electing me as a president of this Assembly for a second term. I also consider my re-election as a vote of confidence and approval of the work I have been doing since becoming vice president in January 2024. As you know, dear colleagues, I have consistently invested in raising the status of this Assembly, increasing respect for our values, principles, and standards, expanding the outreach and impact of our work, while also promoting dialogue and search for meaningful compromises without compromising with our values. In my inaugural speech last year, I identified increasing the visibility of our Assembly as a key priority. I'm pleased to see tangible results, with media interest in our work significantly rising. From 2023 to 2024, international media coverage of PACE sessions grew up by 60%, reflecting both the importance of our Assembly's effort and our enhanced ability to communicate our achievements to the public. Strengthening dialogue with our partners is another priority of mine, which I took very seriously this year. Over these months, I have held overall 412 bilateral meetings, namely 100 ambassadors, many of whom I met more than once, which demonstrates the willingness of the Assembly to strengthen cooperation with the Committee of Ministers. 84 delegation members, fulfilling my intention to work closely with national representatives of our 46 member states. 81 other meetings, ranging from the presidents of parliamentary assemblies of NATO and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, to the Commissioner for Human Rights, to European Court of Human Rights, and many others. 39 chairpersons of our political groups and national delegations, many of whom more than once. 37 ministers of our 46 member states, reinforcing the synergies between the Assembly and the Committee of Ministers. 21 presidents of national parliaments, deepening the collaboration of the Assembly and its country's parliament. 16 presidents of countries, prime ministers and deputy prime ministers. 12 secretary generals and deputy secretary generals of international institutions, among them the Secretary General of the United Nations. 11 human rights representatives, 8 United Nations officials beyond the Secretary General, and I also had the honor to visit Pope Francis in the Vatican last November and welcome the Ecumenical Patriarch yesterday here in Strasbourg. Last but not least, over these 12 months, I traveled to 40 cities across 3 continents, namely Europe, Africa, and America, to convey our ideals, standards, and best practices in official authorities, civil society, and every individual as possible. We are also, dear colleagues, developing new media tools and manuals for new members of the PACE, which are already available to all of you. We need to be more visible, not for ourselves, but for the principles we fight for. Dear colleagues, entering the issues of high priority for our Assembly, I begin with the ongoing Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. I have worked tirelessly with all of you to ensure that this war does not become normalized and that our Assembly remains focused and decisive. Every session's agenda has included debates on various aspects of the war, resulting in meaningful resolutions. Supporting Ukraine and working with international actors to restore peace and justice remains my primary commitment. Also, as you know, the so-called elections took place yesterday in Belarus, with Mr. Lukashenko reconfirmed himself as the country's ruler. We will discuss this matter later this week, and it is indeed very symbolic that this bogus election coincides with the first ever participation of the delegation of the Belarusian opposition in the work of our Assembly. I wish to welcome them and stress that their presence in our hemicycle is an important signal we send to the people of Belarus that Europe has not forgotten them. Problems concerning the respect of human rights in some of our member countries, problems concerning the regression of democratic ideals, the democratic backslide, problems concerning immigration, equality, discrimination against our fellow citizens because of their different racial or personal identity, will continue to concern us this year. A key challenge is the impact of artificial intelligence. Parliamentary Assembly adopted the Council of Europe AI Convention in September 2024. This year, I plan to organize an international event to explore AI's impact on democracy, engaging global and European actors to address these cross-border challenges collaboratively. After my election last year, I proposed the creation of an AI-based tool to support Assembly members. I'm proud to announce today that this tool is now ready to assist all of you. On our website, under the Resolution tab, you will find an AI-generated summary section that offers concise overviews of key issues and decisions, allowing readers to grasp the main points in less than 2 minutes, enhancing transparency. We have also improved efficiency with AI text-to-speech tools for plenary session minutes, speeding up debate report publication and streamlining multilingual processes. This reflects our commitment to innovation and best practices in parliamentary work. I extend Heartfelt thanks to the team led by General Secretary Despina Hadjivasiliou for ensuring the project's success within a year and setting the stage for future advancements. I'm also deeply indebted to all staff and colleagues of the Assembly who have worked tirelessly alongside me. Dear colleagues, last year I started that we in this Assembly stand with the oppressed and not the oppressors, advocating for more diplomacy and less conflict in these turbulent times. While we often praise my motherland, ancient Athens, and the democracy which was invented there, today I want to reflect on a darker chapter of Athenian democracy history, the dialogue of the Athenians with the Milesians, found in Thukydides' history book number 5. It recounts the debate between Athens and the neutral island of Milos during the Peloponnesian War, 416 before Christ. The Athenians, portrayed as pragmatic and cynical, argued the power determines law, while the weaker Milesians appealed to morality. When negotiations failed, the Athenians besieged Milos, executed the men, and enslaved the women and children, an act of cruelty emblematic of hegemonic arrogance. Did the Athenians pay for this cynicism? Yes, they did. Their actions contributed to their downfall, starting with their catastrophic Sicilian campaign 415, just a year later, and eventually defeat by Sparta. The collapse of Athenian hegemony is a stark reminder of how arrogance and oppression can lead to isolation and ruin. The symbolism is timeless, as I already said. This is what we have to counteract. We must resist cynicism. We must resist everything that undermines democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. This year, we celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Human Rights Convention. Let's give our best to support our principles against cynicism and anti-democratic obsessions. Thank you.
Sparta, which you like very much.
Yes.
So,
I'm sorry, that's mine.
yes. Στο δικό σου. So, dear colleagues, we are now the next item on the agenda is the election of vice presidents of the Assembly. I have received 15 candidatures according to the rules. They are set out in document AS Info 2025-01. If there are no requests for votes for one or more candidates, the candidates proposed by the national delegations will be declared elected. So, since there has been no request for a vote, I declare the candidates elected as vice president of this Assembly. Their order of presidents will be determined by their age. The next item on the agenda is the appointment of members of committees. The candidatures for committees have been published in Document Commissions 2025-01 and Addendum 1. Are these proposals approved, dear colleagues? Yes, the proposed candidatures are approved and the committees are appointed accordingly. Before we examine the draft agenda, the Assembly needs to consider requests for debates under the urgent procedure. The Bureau has received the following requests. First, urgent procedure debate requested by the 5 political groups under the title, Opinion on a Draft Convention for the Protection of the Profession of Lawyer. Second, urgent procedure debate requested by Mr. Petru and more than 20 members under the title, The Urgent Need for Free and Fair Elections in Belarus. Third, urgent procedure debate requested by Mrs. Komenko and more than 20 members under the title, European Commitment to a Just and Lasting Peace in Ukraine. At its meetings this morning, the Bureau decided to recommend to the Assembly that the urgent debates on opinion on a draft convention for the protection of the profession of lawyer and on the urgent need for free and fair elections in Belarus and European commitment to a just and lasting peace in Ukraine be held in the current part session. We shall consider the request in the order in which they were made. Does the Assembly agree to the Bureau's recommendation to hold an urgent debate on the opinion on a draft convention for the protection of the profession of lawyer? The Bureau recommendation is accepted and the request for urgent procedure is therefore approved and referred to the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights for report. It is proposed that the debate will take place on Thursday morning as indicated in the draft agenda. We will now consider the next request for debate under the urgent procedure. Does the Assembly agree to the Bureau recommendation to hold an urgent debate on the urgent need for free and fair elections in Belarus? Yes, the Bureau's recommendation is accepted and the request for urgent procedure is therefore approved and referred to the Committee on Political Affairs and Democracy for report. It is proposed that the debate will be held on Thursday morning as indicated in the draft agenda. Does the Assembly agree to the Bureau's recommendation to hold an urgent debate on the European commitment to a just and lasting peace in Ukraine? The Bureau's recommendation is accepted and the request for urgent procedure is therefore approved and referred to the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights for report. It is proposed that the debate will take place on Thursday morning as indicated in the draft agenda. The next item of business is the adoption of the agenda for the first part of the 2025 ordinary session. The draft agenda submitted for the Assembly's approval was adopted by the Bureau this morning. I remind members, it is agreed, I suppose, yeah. I remind members that we have just agreed 2 debates under the urgent procedure and the current affairs debate. Three debates under urgent procedure. The debates under the urgent procedure will take place, as I said earlier, on Thursday. Is the draft agenda agreed to, colleagues? Yes, it is agreed. So now have to adopt the minutes. The minutes of the meeting of the Standing Committee in Luxembourg on the 29th of November 2024 have been distributed as a document, AS.per 2024 PV03. I invite the Assembly to take note of these minutes. So, shall we go? So we now come to the joint debate on the progress report of the Bureau and the Standing Committee. It is document 16096 and addendum 1, 2, 3, and 4. With this, we will consider the report from the ad hoc committee on observation of the parliamentary elections in Georgia. We shall also consider the report from the Committee on the Honoring of Obligations and Commitments by Member States of the Council of Europe on progress of the Assembly's monitoring procedure. The progress report of the Bureau and the Standing Committee will be presented by Mr. Pablo Hispan. The second report is titled Observation of the Parliamentary Election in Georgia, presented by Mr. Julian Boulay. The final report on the progress of the Assembly's monitoring procedure will be presented by Mrs. Zanda Kalina Lukasevica. We will suspend the item at 12. No, okay, we will suspend the item now to enable the address by His Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew I, who is on his way to our hemicycle. Thank you.
Sa toute sainteté, le patriarche œcuménique Bartholomew Ier.
Your Holiness, it gives me a particular honor and pleasure, having just been re-elected as President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe for another mandate, to welcome you among us in the House of Democracy, sheltering representatives of parliaments of our 46 member states, 18 years after your first visit here in January 2007. Your Holiness, you serve as the 270th Ecumenical Patriarch and Archbishop of Constantinople within the Eastern Orthodox Church since 1991. You are the influential spiritual and religious leader of 300 million Orthodox Christians worldwide, being known not only for your stewardship of Eastern Orthodoxy, but also for your efforts towards interreligious dialogue and cooperation, building bridges with Catholic, Jewish, and Muslim communities, and promoting religious freedom, tolerance, and human rights. You also have a deep concern for the environment, and for this environmental activism, you are often referred to as the Green Patriarch. You have declared for human beings to destroy God's creation, degrade the integrity of the earth, and contaminate the planet's waters, land, and air. All of these are sins. I truly look forward to your inspiring address, but please allow me to mention an anecdote which is very dear to my heart. On 22nd of October 1991, I was at the Ecumenical Patriarchate as a journalist. I had just been preceded by a week in Ankara, where I met and talked with the then Prime Minister Mesut Yilmaz, political leaders like Erbakan and Inonu, and the newly elected Prime Minister Demirel. It was an interesting week for me as a journalist that ended with my trip to Istanbul. I did not know at the time that a new patriarch has been elected the same day, and I was lucky enough to see you a few hours after your election and to have the honor of getting the first interview with you. Since then, we have met many times in your office, at the Patriarchate, or elsewhere. From all our conversations, I will always remember your answer to a question that I asked you. And what do you, Your Holiness, consider to be the most interesting or favorite point for you in the theological text you have read? And you immediately replied that it was the letter of the Apostle Paul to the Corinthians that speaks of love. I read it and learn it by heart from then on. Dear colleagues, I want to share it with you. In Corinthians 13.1, Paul writes, "If I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, then I'm a sounding brass and a changing cymbal. Love is the language that needs no translation, dear colleagues. Love, in other words, is what we're practicing here in our chamber when we talk about human rights, about respect for democracy, for every human being, and for the rule of law. Your Holiness, I have the honor to give you the floor.
Your Excellency Theodoros Rousopoulos, President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Congratulations for your unanimous re-election this morning. You saw me, you met me at the Patriarchate immediately after my election as Patriarch, and I have the honor to see you, to meet you once again immediately after your re-election as President. We wish you a fruitful tenure, as it was your first one as President of this auspicious body. May God strengthen you in your responsible ministry. Your Excellencies, Your Eminences, esteemed dignitaries and beloved friends, it is a unique privilege and special joy to address all of you, especially on such a significant day, on which we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. We are deeply honored that we are here once again after 2007 at this prestigious meeting of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, an international organization committed to upholding and promoting the fundamental principles of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, namely all that defines the culture of integrity, freedom, and justice. Moreover, it is a particular honor to be here with so many eminent members of this assembly, along with other dignitaries and foreign diplomats. The presence among you of an Orthodox clergyman may come as a surprise to some, but as the primate of the Church of Constantinople, Ecumenical Patriarchate, we follow in the footsteps of a long line of church ministers with a universal vision, who appreciate how the world of peace, of faith, can prove a powerful ally in society's efforts to address issues of freedom, justice, and peace. This is because religion can provide a unique perspective in the objective to eradicate poverty and hunger, to address fundamentalism and racism, as well as to advance tolerance and dialogue. Churches and religious communities are not only pivotal in people's personal or spiritual lives, they also reserve a critical role in mobilizing institutions and societies on manifold levels. Whether we are dealing with climate change or regional conflict, there is today a heightened sense of common concern and common responsibility, which is felt with particular sensitivity by people of faith, as well as and alongside those whose outlook is expressly secular. This is precisely why at the Ecumenical Patriarchate we are deeply conscious of our connections with the past and the present. As a church whose history spans 17 centuries, We are rooted in a rich past, living in the complex present, yet looking to a hope-filled future. It is precisely this living tradition of faith that permits us to speak boldly about critical contemporary issues, such as religious freedom, human rights, and the protection of the natural environment. This is why we have pioneered a series of inter-Christian dialogues, but also inter-religious conversations to build bridges across diverse cultural and racial divides. In a world that is proving to be increasingly divided and divisive, we feel an obligation and vocation to build bridges of peace and unity, as well as of cooperation and collaboration. The Ecumenical Patriarchate is a living proof that different cultures and different faiths can coexist in solidarity and peace. This is our vision and message. By reaching out to our fellow human beings across real or imagined boundaries, we are convinced that we are reaching out both to God, in whose image all human beings are fashioned, but also to our neighbor, whom we should always serve and support. There is no doubt in our mind that religious principles and values are undergoing an immense revival and can play a major role in guaranteeing coexistence and security among different races and cultures. So we strive to forge and nurture connections across religious and cultural borders. 30 years ago, we convened an international assembly of world spiritual leaders in Istanbul, officially declaring or repeating any crime committed in the name of religion is a crime committed against religion, commonly known as the Bosphorus Declaration. Rising extremes and expressions of fundamentalism and nationalism have given greater urgency to the cause of East-West as well as North-South unity. The way we treat our fellow human beings, persecuted by religious discrimination and racist populism, reveals the kind of people we want to be. Today, the world has truly become a global village, and its citizens desire to live in peace and safety. It's up to leaders such as you to make this happen. In this address, we would like to highlight two areas of importance and interest for us at the Ecumenical Patriarchate, which we are convinced can support the principles that the Council of Europe cherishes so dearly. The first area is the importance of dialogue. Wherever we live in the world, and whatever the nature of our profession, society invariably includes representatives of humankind in all its wondrous diversity. We hear it often stated that our world is in crisis. Yet it is also true that never have human beings, especially influential leaders such as you, had the opportunity of affecting and transforming our world so radically as a result of technological advances in social media and travel. So, while it may be true that this is a time of crisis, it must equally be underlined in a spirit of optimism and hope that there is still great tolerance and understanding for respective traditions and cultures. The second area of urgency is the protection of our planet. For more than 3 decades, the Ecumenical Patriarchate has convened numerous international symposia, seminars, and summits on the state of the earth and its waters, on the Mediterranean and the Black Seas, as well as along the Amazon and the Mississippi rivers. Our goal has been to raise awareness and remind people that respect for and protection of the natural environment constitutes a moral duty for all. We are convinced that what we do for the earth is intimately related to what we do for people, whether in the context of human rights, international politics, or world peace. In other words, the way we respond to climate change is intimately connected to the way we respond to human challenges. This is why our entire planet is affected by the conflicts in Ukraine or the Middle East. For instance, Russia's unjustifiable war has resulted in irreversible damage to the ecosystems of the country, with unseen and unforeseeable impact on climate change for the region and beyond. In this context, we recognize that this winter plenary session of the Parliamentary Assembly is focusing its attention on, among other vital issues, the humanitarian crisis in the Middle East and especially in Gaza. In the Holy Land, Orthodox Christians continue to preserve and nurture their faith despite severe trials. We have therefore expressed our full moral and spiritual support to the Patriarchates of Jerusalem and Antioch, among the most ancient churches in the world and birthplace to Christianity. We have assured them that in the comforting words of St. Paul, if one member suffers, then all members suffer together. And if one member is honored, then all members also rejoice together. From the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Nevertheless, our support for churches in crisis transcends mere moral or spiritual support. The development and maturity of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine demonstrates how solidarity and unity work in practice and not just theory. The bestowal and recognition of its autocephaly, namely ecclesiastical self-administration, by the Ecumenical Patriarchate 6 years ago in January 2019, demonstrates how canonical order and pastoral care can heal divisions and wounds of centuries. It also confirms that the ancient canonical principles of the Orthodox Church can address contemporary problems in a divided world. The entire world is daily witness to how the courageous people of Ukraine have struggled and sacrificed so much for independence from oppression and for religious freedom. However, we have witnessed the same passion for life and liberty in Estonia and Lithuania as well. And the Ecumenical Patriarchate remains dedicated to responding to such appeals for ecclesiastical integrity and sovereignty, respecting the distinct and unequivocal needs of every church and every community. At the same time, in our tradition attained over many centuries, we strive to honor the unique identity of each culture, while encouraging them to engage constructively in encounter and dialogue with the rest of the world, thereby avoiding introversion and discrimination. This balance requires wisdom in distinguishing between essential traditions and adaptable practices, between fundamental principles and contextual expressions. Dear friends, whether speaking of conflict and injustice, of economy or ecology, of discriminatory persecution or forced immigration, we are called to remember that none of us can any longer pretend to live as if the rest of the world does not exist. All of us have an ethical responsibility to consider carefully the way that we inhabit the world, the choices that we choose to make, and the lifestyles that we aspire to adopt. We can no longer live as isolated individuals, disengaged from events in our world. We are created for encounter, and we are judged based on our response to each encounter. We are relational beings and institutions, and as such, we are both responsible and accountable for one another. We are social beings, and as such, we share the world and the planet's resources. In other words, we live in a global community, and as such, we share common values which transcend national, political, religious, racial, or cultural boundaries. This ethical awareness does not merely depend on our religious convictions, but on the universal dignity of all people. And here, the far-sighted and at the same time realistic perspective of religion can play a vital role. In a document entitled For the Life of the World, Toward an Orthodox Social Ethos, which was endorsed by the Holy Synod of the Ecumenical Patriarchate exactly 5 years ago, we recognize that Christian hope lies not in the kingdoms of this world, but in the kingdom of God, not in sons of men, but in the Son of God, who can liberate us from the practices and structures of sin, oppression, and violence that corrupt our fallen world. In this world, we are strangers and pilgrims, but we can also enjoy a foretaste of that final redemption of all social order in God's kingdom. Indeed, we have been entrusted with a sign to exhibit before the nations, by which to call them to a life of peace and charity under the shelter of God's promises. This is from the 8th paragraph of the text for the life of the world. We can make a difference in the world. We can bring greater healing to its people. We can provide renewed hope if all of us, political and religious leaders, work together towards a shared goal, namely to leave behind a better world for our children than what we inherited or created. A world where conflict and war are not the ways of resolving disputes and divisions, where all religions and all races are equally and indiscriminately respected, where people have enough love as the mother tongue of all humankind, and where nature's diversity is protected. Thank you for your kind invitation and attention. May God bless your deliberations and decisions.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Thank you for your inspiring speech. I will bear in my mind especially what you have said about the dialogue, of course, which we serve or we try to serve so that we can solve problems raised in our continent. Dear colleagues, we shall hear next contributions from speakers from the 5 political groups, and on behalf of the Socialists, I call Mrs. Edith Estrella. Edith, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and congratulations for your election. Your Holiness, thank you very much for being with us today. My question is, how can religious leaders help to protect the environment, given that the Ecumenical Patriarchate has been involved in environmental protection since the 1990s, and that climate change is an increasingly important issue? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edith. Your Holiness, I will give the floor to all the representatives from the political groups, and then, if you wish, you can respond. So, I'm going now to Mr. Pablo Hispan on behalf of the European People's Party.
Thank you, President, and welcome, and congratulations for your elections. Your Holiness, welcome to this Assembly. I am Roman Catholic and leader of the EPP in this institution, a group with deep Christian values. Thank you for being with us and for the words that you have given to us that have been very inspirational. I am going to ask about one of the challenges of our times. How do you envision the Church's role in supporting refugees and promoting peace, as highlighted in your address at the December 2023 UN Conference in Geneva? And what step do you believe the international community should take to address the root causes of displacement? Thank you.
Thank you, Pablo. On behalf of the European Conservatives, I call now Elisabetta Gardini. Elisabetta. So the leader of the group, Mr. Scholt Nemeth, will take the floor. Scholt.
Congratulations, President, to your election, and your All Holiness Patriarch Bartholomew. I am a Hungarian Protestant, Calvinist, Presbyterian, and I am also the President of the Conservatives and Patriots in this Assembly. We all know that the most persecuted minority in the world today are the Christians. Some estimate that it is around 200 million. What steps are taken and what steps should be taken, in your opinion, by Church and by political actors to safeguard the rights of persecuted Christians, the freedoms of Christians And especially, I would like to ask you relating the Middle East, the situation in Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zsolt. Now, on behalf of the Liberal Democrats, the leader of the group, Mr. Julian Boulay. Julian.
Thank you, President, and congratulations for your re-election. Your All Holiness, on behalf of the Liberals in the House, welcome to this Assembly. I'm very happy to see you here. And on behalf of my group, I have 3 remarks and 1 question. First of all, I'm very happy that you have been condemning firmly the Russian aggression in Ukraine and that you had the courage to tell Patriarch Kirill to either confront the dictator or step down, but not legitimize the war in Ukraine by the image of the Russian Orthodox Church. So that is very important. Thank you. Secondly, I'm very happy that you have fully recognized the Ukrainian autonomous, independent Orthodox Church. That is really important. And thirdly, I just read the news yesterday that His Sanctity, Pope Francis, was open on finding a common date for celebrating Easter. I really hope that Your Holiness and His Sanctity will find the right wisdom in order to that happen in the coming period, as this is a very divisive celebration for millions of Europeans. Now, I have a question also for you. Your All Holiness, as artificial intelligence becomes increasingly integrated into daily life and shapes the way humanity interacts with creation, how do you envision the Orthodox Church addressing the ethical and spiritual implications of artificial intelligence, particularly in terms of safeguarding human dignity, freedom, and people's relationship to God? Thank you for receiving this question, and for your information and for the information of all of you, you should be aware that this question has been formulated by the help of artificial intelligence, combining the words question on behalf of the Liberals to the Patriarch with the content of artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Very interesting. I believe that the Patriarch will not need the help of the artificial intelligence to respond. So now I'm going to give the floor to Nina Kasimati on behalf of the United European Left.
Thank you, Mr. President, and congratulations on your re-elections. On behalf of the Unified European Left, Your All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople, as the Christian world prepares to commemorate 1700 years since the First Ecumenical Council of Nicaea, how do you assess the current state of relations between churches, and what is the significance and potential of these celebrations for fostering unity and dialogue? Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Dear colleagues, I will now ask His All Holiness the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, the first, to take the floor and make some comments or respond to questions being asked by the 5 political groups of this Assembly. Your All Holiness, you have the floor.
Distinguished guests, dear friends, thank you for your thoughtful questions. I will try to integrate them and provide a holistic response. First, regarding the environmental question. As stewards of our planet, we have a sacred duty to protect creation in its entirety and all its creatures. Our unchecked consumption and relentless pursuit of economic growth have led us to the brink of environmental catastrophe. It is time to reclaim our spiritual connection to the natural world and act before it is too late. The environmental crisis calls for immediate address and urgent attention because it constitutes a vital ethical and spiritual challenge beyond any technical, political, or financial solutions. The Holy and Great Council of the Orthodox Church in 2016 recognized this crisis as being essentially rooted in human hearts. Religions should remind humanity that Earth is a divine gift entrusted to our care for protection not for exploitation. The principle of stewardship defines our relationship with the earth, affirming our role and responsibility as caretakers rather than owners of its resources for the sake of future generations. This understanding is what guides our actions concerning environmental protection. We must therefore steadfastly promote sustainable living and environmental justice, and we must act with a sense of urgency on every level of social and civil life. Second, about the artificial intelligence issue. In light of these concerns, looking at the Framework Convention on Artificial Intelligence of the Council of Europe, the Ecumenical Patriarchate observes notable progress in addressing crucial ethical and social concerns raised by this fast-growing technology. Artificial intelligence has immense potential for positive transformation in environmental protection, education, and health care, offering innovative pathways to solve significant human problems. At the same time, from invasions of privacy to rising inequalities and possible compromise of institutions, this great tool also contains inherent risks. The basic focus of the Convention on Human Rights, democratic values and legal systems can be complemented by many Christian values and principles. Technical progress must support human development and serve the welfare of all. Therefore, implementation of artificial intelligence requires respect of individual dignity, safeguard of fundamental freedoms, and advancement of social equity. Inasmuch as they mandate careful study of artificial intelligence systems and their wider impact on society, the established standards of openness and responsibility of the Convention show great relevance. The methodology of Fideria provides a specific means for risk identification and reduction, calling for careful evaluation of artificial intelligence applications on the basis of ethical consequences and technical performances. In this context, the Orthodox Christian tradition would underline moral discernment and direction along with scientific research and development. The Ecumenical Patriarchate invites all nations to participate in this important project for the sake of supporting and shaping a technological growth that satisfies the universal needs of humankind, including the protection of human rights and religious freedom for those facing persecution and injustice, particularly religious minorities who have historically endured discrimination. Third, responding to the question about the Christians in the Middle East, we would like to draw your attention to a stark example of such persecution in the ongoing crisis faced by Christians in the Middle East. Many Christian communities there trace their roots to the first days of Christianity. Yet today, their very existence is threatened in regions where they have lived for almost 2 millennia. For instance, once a thriving Christian community, Deir ez-Zor, Syria, now boasts just 7 elderly people. 7 elderly people. The meager remains of 300 families who fled elsewhere in 2013. Extremist forces have destroyed their holy sites, while efforts toward reconstruction have not brought back the displaced. Political instability only accentuates their suffering. Moreover, while crucial, current humanitarian efforts concentrate more on meeting immediate needs than on addressing underlying causes. Recent events expose deliberate attacks on Christian communities all over northern Syria, causing complete population displacement. Attacks on churches and personal threats cause the Coptic community of Egypt constant anxiety and insecurity. This emergency calls for coordinated responses, including better international monitoring, all-encompassing protection plans, and continuous interfaith communication. Material aid for displaced persons must complement diplomatic initiatives ensuring religious freedom. It is unknown if Middle Eastern Christianity, with its own customs and legacy, can survive. Their continuous presence benefits not only in terms of religious diversity, but also in terms of maintaining the cultural depth and historical continuity of the region. International agencies are called to translate words into deeds. This involves community preservation programs, emergency response plans, and dedicated monitoring systems. Any system of developing regional government must guarantee the rights and protections of Christian people. At the same time, there is an urgent need for a coordinated global response to the growing number of refugees worldwide, a crisis further exacerbated by the impacts of climate change. Fourth, in relation to the critical matter of the refugee crisis, and in the wake of all this, at the Global Refugee Forum in Geneva on the 14th of December 2023, we spoke of how the refugee crisis and the climate crisis have evolved alongside one another. Our Church's involvement in building peace and addressing climate change includes meeting the material needs of refugees, such as food, shelter, and health. Furthermore, we strive to advocate for the fundamental rights of all people, stressing that seeking asylum comprises a basic human right, a position firmly confirmed by religious leaders during the Global Refugee Forum. Contemporary events have underlined the necessity of such action. In August 2024, the patriarchs and heads of churches in Jerusalem released a statement expressing grave concern about the situation in Gaza, underlining then the immediate need for hostilities to stop in order to protect all people without exception, including those looking for safety inside religious buildings. Dealing with the principal causes of displacement demands a strong worldwide response. This implies addressing political instability, economic inequality, and environmental damage that frequently result in mass migration. Finally, addressing your question about the upcoming celebrations for Nicaea. The same spirit of cooperation and shared purpose is reflected in the enduring legacy of the First Ecumenical Council of Nicaea, today Iznik, in our country, Turkey. With the commemoration and celebration this year of the 1700th anniversary of the Council held in 325, Christian communities across ecumenical boundaries have a unique opportunity to remember how they share the doctrinal statements of the Nicene Creed formulated on that historic occasion. The Nicene Creed, which in the Orthodox Church is known as the symbol of faith, is a confession binding all Christian traditions together, strengthening their fellowship and sustaining their relations. Recent exchanges between the churches of Rome and Constantinople have resulted in closer ecclesiastical relations. Just weeks ago, through His Eminence Kurt Cardinal Koch, President of the Dicastery for Promoting Christian Unity, His Holiness Pope Francis declared another opportunity to bear witness to the growing communion that already exists among all who are baptized in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit. His planned pilgrimage to Iznik, ancient Nicaea, together with our modesty next May, shows our common commitment toward fostering reconciliation. The Nicene Creed is proof of our shared theological legacy, motivating coordinated efforts towards restored communion between Eastern and Western Christianity. The Ecumenical Patriarchate is equally committed to the advancement of Christian unity, not only through theological dialogue, but also by vibrant discussions on a common date of Easter. We believe that the historical anniversary of Nicaea should inspire fresh theological conversation, as well as renewed Christian cooperation. Let us build a world where Christ's prayer for unity is finally realized. I thank you once again for your kind participation and attention.
Thank you, Your All Holiness. Since you have ended your speech, you're replying the questions to my esteemed colleagues about Pope Francis. Allow me to share a moment that I had with him last November in his office. When I told him greetings from the Ecumenical Patriarchate, he was really happy. And it was impressive for me that in a room full of history, in a room full of experience, and in a room full of memory, Pope Francis led me to his desk, and he showed me the only one picture that is decorating his desk, and it is a picture, a photo with his Father, Holiness, the Patriarch of Constantinople. That means that all the efforts you both are doing for Christianity, and not only for Christianity, but all religions serving humanity and the future of our planet, are not in vain. Dear colleagues, before I close the sitting, let me please clarify that the urgent procedure debate on European commitment to a just and lasting peace in Ukraine will take place Thursday afternoon on the basis of a report by the Political Affairs Committee. Your All Holiness, once again, thank you for being with us today. This sitting is adjourned. We will meet 3:30 p.m. with the agenda which was approved this morning.